What we have here in the West Mountain Wildlife Management Area as a piece of the Kingdom Heritage Lands project and the conserved lands in the landscape around here is something that enables a high degree of what we might call ecological resilience, so the ability to handle changes into the future. Really, to me, a lot of the story of the management area and the project as a whole is about the landscape. We have these large areas of land that are well connected to allow plants and animals to move as environmental conditions change. We have here a map where we can see the 3 parcels on the state scale. We have West Mountain Wildlife Management Area, about 22,000 acres, Silvio Conti National Wildlife Refuge at high 20,000 acres, and then we have the private timberlands that are now owned by Weyerhaeuser, about 86,000 acres. This block of land anchors an even larger set of connected lands. So going down, we go to the Victory Wildlife Management Area, State Forest, and Darling State Park. And going north is another large wildlife management area, Bill Sladek, at about 10,000 acres. Combined with a lot of smaller conserved lands by the Nature Conservancy, Vermont Land Trust, and other local partners, this creates a block of almost 200,000 acres of conserved lands in the Northeast Kingdom.
We're situated in the active management area portion of West Mountain Wildlife Management Area. And this is one of our commercial timber harvests. We have some goals, some targets set for different age classes and age structures for the various wildlife species. Some of the treatment that was done here was done for the purpose of creating those openings and creating some gaps in our forest to diversify the age structure with the hopes of getting a native forest or a natural forest condition growing back in there. Some of the holes are upwards of a few acres in size, and some of them are down to half-quarter acre size. Generally, the goal is to get some young forest growing so that some of those species that utilize and require that habitat condition will thrive.
There's actually a whole constellation of partners here. We have the Nature Conservancy and the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which both hold an easement on the state property. At the same time, there's an easement on the private forest lands that's held by the Agency of Natural Resources and the Vermont Land Trust. So we have a whole set of organizations that are partners that meet to talk about how to further the conservation goals and the public access goals and working forestry goals that have been set out in this project's vision.
This is the very first cut that we did on the state land after the state acquired it. One of the concerns that the public had, especially the hunting community and the logging community, was that we weren't going to cut any wood. What this is designed to enhance grouse habitat. If I remember, there's something like 15 patches in here, and they're either 1, 2, or 3 acres in size. And it was a complete clear cut of all the stems. And the plan is, of course, to have different age classes of hardwood for the grouse. But everything went well, and it appeased some of the concerns that the general public had about us not cutting wood on this property. So I was moose hunting in this area last year, and there was also a lot of moose sign out here, which you'd expect with all the young growth.
The core is essentially a portion of the ownership where we're going to let nature take its course, let the forest do what forest wants to do, to let natural processes drive the succession of our forest. A couple of things that we have done to kind of speed that along are the removal of the roads. We've pulled some bridges. We've tried to scarify this road surfaces so that vegetation could get established. Right here where we're standing is one of those roads that I think it's been 15 years roughly since we essentially closed it with some help from Mother Nature with a rain event. The core area is still public land. There's nothing precluding people from using it. We have actually made concerted efforts to keep things open to pedestrian traffic. I mean, most of the road work or the closing of road work we've done hasn't been done in a fashion that you can't go and walk down the corridor at this point. But over time, as people either use or don't use those corridors through the woods, the vegetation certainly will grow in and make it less and less obvious.
Having an unmanaged part of our landscape is important in the context of a much broader landscape that's being managed for all kinds of uses, for timber, for recreation. It's important that we have active management going on different pieces of land, but it's also important to have areas that are really unmanaged and be a source area for breeding populations that can disperse out onto the landscape. We're seeing species move 10 miles north and 31 feet in elevation every decade. And we need to be prepared by creating pathways for species to move across the landscape as the climate changes. It's been 20 years since this project was done, and it was done through an amazing partnership of state, federal, and local agencies and organizations. It's a mosaic of different types of management. The reasons that we had for conserving this land 20 years ago were and continue to be really important. But now it's even more important because we know that this is one of the largest carbon sinks in New England. The northern forest is critical for that. And in the context of climate change, which is new, we weren't talking about this 20 years ago. I mean, we were talking about climate change 20 years ago, but we weren't talking about it the way we are today. We're looking at this landscape as being a really critical and essential component of helping to mitigate and help Vermont, help New England be resilient. It brought together a collaboration of partners like never before, and we have an amazing outcome. I think that over time, we will only appreciate what people did in 1998 to protect this land and have it available for all of the reasons why we do conservation.